Alright, welcome back to our podcast. I'm the gentleman, accompanied by the disturbed Southern Belle.
Hello.
And in this episode, we will be continuing our series on Hollywood's more infamous and sad stories of actors and actresses. This one is probably, again, one of the most well-known actors there are, particularly because he pretty much defined a generation. Clark Gable.
Yep.
So, as the foremost man leading the golden age of Hollywood, as it was known, the world knows Gable best as Rhett Butler from Gone with the Wind. But to those who were close to him, his legacy was much more complicated. He was very much a womanizer, as most men seem to have been back then.
Yeah, just back then.
Just back then. Absolutely never happens nowadays at all.
Nah.
But anyways.
It was very prevalent back in those days, though, yeah.
It was, very much so. It was like, throw a coin and you'll just hit a man who's cheating on his wife.
Probably. Especially back in, like, Hollywood or somewhere.
Yeah, I meant Hollywood specifically. Hollywood, and just Los Angeles, is, and as far as I know, has always been a hellhole.
Kind of corrupt anyway, in a lot of ways. I guess, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a hellhole, but yeah, it does have a lot of corruption, but it's not the only place that does by any stretch.
It's burning often enough to be called hell.
It's, crazy. Anyway,
back to the topic. Gable's entry into the world was not smooth, as you can probably imagine. Many of these people are not.
No.
Firstly, because his doctor's illegible handwriting made his birth certificate list him as male and female, because yes.
Yeah.
Then, just 10 months after he was born, a rather unfortunate tragedy had struck his family. His mother had passed on, leaving his family without a matriarch, and this would have a very bad effect on his life, but also a positive effect, as it would turn out, for everyone else.
Right.
His father was a Protestant, while his mother was Catholic. After she had passed on, his father had refused to raise Gable in the Catholic faith. This had infuriated his mother's family, and they had fought him on it, insisting that the boy spend his time with his deceased mother's family.
Right.
Eventually, Gable's father relented. After all, he was otherwise occupied trying to support the family as well as remarry, so that way his infant son would grow up with a mother.
Right.
Eventually, he succeeded and remarried when Gable was 2 years old. His new stepmother would have a very profound impact on his life. And, by proxy, a lot of people's lives. She, more than anyone else, really, I would say, is probably the one who could take the most credit for Gable becoming what he became.
Right.
Her name was Jenny Dunlap. She made sure that he was well-educated, well-dressed, and well-groomed. And she also shared with him her love for Shakespeare.
Right.
On the other side, his father made sure to develop Gable's interest in more manly pursuits like hunting and hard physical work.
Right.
However, Gable had his eye set on something else, something more aligned with his mother's passions. Gable discovered his passion for acting when he was just 17 years old, but there were a number of stumbling blocks in his way. Not only was his family going through a rough time financially, but there was also another rather heartbreaking tragedy around the corner. When Gable had turned 19, his stepmother, Jenny Dunlap, passed at the age of 46.
Goodness.
Still just a teenager, he had joined his father working in the oil field, but he knew he wanted more. Gable left his father behind and headed out for the Pacific Northwest, where he took odd jobs. Also, just want to point out, this is the last time you will hear about his father in this story. Just pure and simple, the last time. As far as I know, he never spoke to his father after this.
Well, they probably just didn't really have much of a relationship. I mean, they were kind of very different in the way they were, but
yeah.
Then again, he may have passed away soon after. Well,
he may have.
Good grief. It seemed like they were dropping like flies back then.
Oh, yeah. The life expectancy was not great back then.
No, not really. Sadly, it wasn't.
Anyways, at one of these jobs, a coworker encouraged Gable to try his hand at acting again, and had also introduced him to a beautiful actress named Franz Dorfler. The new couple got engaged and joined a traveling theater group, but soon enough, something would tear their bond apart, as many marriages often did back then in that specific area.
All right.
After the pair moved to Portland, Oregon, Dorfler introduced Gable to a local acting coach named Josephine Dillon. It was a grave mistake, as it would turn out. As Gable began to work with Dillon, it quickly became apparent that she was interested in more than just his career.
Oh, no.
While Dillon did help Gable with his voice, diction, and body control, she had also begun to pay his bills.
Oh, God, body control. That kind of sounds
Body
dirty.
control.
That kind of sounds a little dirty,
Considering the context.
Yeah, considering she was
yes.
interested in more. Yeah, I know what it probably means, but still,
It probably meant both, to be
probably made it
completely
sound a
honest.
little dirty, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So, before long, Gable had left his fiancée for his acting coach, who was 17 years his senior.
Good
That will come up
grief.
again later. And he wasn't even a star yet. He was just some guy.
Well, yeah, back then he would have been.
After a long period spent grooming Clark Gable for Hollywood, Josephine Dillon finally decided that he was ready for the screen. She had moved to Los Angeles to start a theater company to give him a stepping stone, and 5 months later, he joined her. The pair wed and lied on their marriage certificate about their age difference, narrowing it down to a more respectable 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Also, wouldn't that make the marriage certificate illegible? Like, not
legal. You would think. I mean,
it has falsified information.
Yeah, if they knew, both of them, yeah. Now, if maybe she lied about her age or something he didn't know, it's
To be
still,
fair,
yeah, you would
I don't
think.
know the laws around that
I don't
in that
either,
time
but
period.
you would think it would not be.
Just based off of today's laws.
Right. You
yeah.
wouldn't think so anyway, but I don't know. I have no clue.
Anyways, Dillon had taught Gable quite a few things, and he was about to put her lessons to scandalous use. Take that as you will. In his early years in the film business, Gable had a dirty little secret, as it turns out. The quote-unquote help of an older mentor had already gotten him to Hollywood, so he repeated that pattern with anyone who would take him. He had many extramarital affairs with both men and women, which is odd, to further his career, including star William Haynes and wealthy actress Pauline Frederick.
Goodness.
Who not only gave him a part in her play, but also bought him a car.
Well, Jamie had
I mean,
sugar
take it where you
mamas
can get
and
it.
daddies, huh?
Yeah.
Well.
So, if you can believe it, this was just the beginning of his wildly scandalous life as a playboy. Eventually, all of Gable's bed hopping took its toll on his marriage to Dillon, and the pair separated in 1929. Gable was doing whatever he could do to climb to the top, and he showed no signs of slowing down. He finally got his first film contract with Path Pictures, and even found another richer, older woman to seduce, an heiress named Maria Lingham. Their age difference was 17 years.
Again.
Told you it'd come up again. Anyways, just days after the courts finalized Gable's divorce from his first wife, he had tied the knot with Lingham. And
good grief. He didn't waste any time, did he?
He wasted no time. Also, that will come up again. He does not like to waste time.
Well.
With anything.
I guess not.
Also, apparently, he just likes older women.
Apparently, he likes anybody.
Or at the very least, has nothing against using an older woman to further his ambitions.
There you go.
Which is fair.
I guess.
Anyways. Right, so he got married to Lingham, and at first, his eyes had stopped wandering. At first. Soon after their wedding, he got another film contract, this time with Warner Brothers. A major player by this point. Still is. More roles in films meant more proximity to starlets. However, he could not charm them all. In 1931, he appeared opposite Greta Garbo, who was already a megastar. Garbo absolutely hated Gable and thought that he was a bad actor. He shot back by calling her a snob, and she wasn't the only enemy he made. Warner Bros. Had signed Gable, but he had failed to impress one of their VIPs. In fact, his opinion on Gable was absolutely devastating. Studio exec Daryl F. Zanuck said that his ears are too big and he looks like an ape. It looked like it would be another long period of struggle to get good parts, but then his luck finally turned around. MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, was looking to expand its stable of handsome young actors, and Gable was in the right place at the right time. Fortunately, they signed him, and finally his career began to take off. One of Gable's early roles put him right on a collision course with destiny. His first starring role was in Dance Fool's Dance with Joan Crawford. She had specifically asked for him to be her leading man, and Crawford famously had one piece of advice for other actors. Do not sleep with your co-stars until you've made at least 3 movies together.
Alrighty.
She broke her own rule. Yeah. However, It is a good thing that this affair never actually led to a fiery breakup, as they would go on to star in a total of 8 movies together.
Goodness.
Still, no matter who either star was married to at the time, they did always tend to mix business with pleasure on set,
Mm,
even though MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer did his best to stop them. Meyer hated the scandal, but he couldn't deny their chemistry.
right.
However, it was Gable's chemistry with another actress that ended up making him a true star.
Hmm.
When Clark Gable played a gangster who seduces Norman Shearer's character in 1931's A Free Soul, he whipped audiences into a frenzy. Soon, people who loved the film sent an avalanche of letters to the studio, but there was one darker side to the fandom. The film was notorious for a scene in which Gable's character violently shoves his love interest.
Mm,
This happened to be the scene that fans love so much for some reason.
yeah.
Violence against women.
I guess. I don't know. They
I,
had some weird things back then that they thought was just wonderful that today would be like, huh? But whatever. I
eh,
don't know.
it is what it is.
Exactly.
Either way, the studio took notice of how much fans loved Gable, and finally they began to give him his due. Gable was one of MGM's top stars, as he appeared in several films with the most famous starlets of the day, including, once again, Joan Crawford. Their on-again, off-again affair continued until one day when it reached a disturbing breaking point. Neither star tried to hide what was going on, despite the fact that they were both married to other people. One gossip columnist called it the affair that nearly burned Hollywood down.
Good grief.
MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer couldn't ignore it anymore, and he threatened to fire them both. Gable may have been a womanizer, but fortunately for him and many other people, he was not an idiot,
Yeah.
as he did actually end up turning his attentions elsewhere.
Right.
Still very much married to his older bride, Maria Lingham,
Right.
Gable gave up his ongoing affair with Joan Crawford, only to find comfort in the arms of another starlet by the name of Marion Davies, who was a popular actress and a longtime mistress of Hollywood impresario Herman J. Mankiewicz,
Hmm.
which I believe ticks all the boxes for a 6 Degrees of Old Hollywood Affairs game.
Sure.
So Gable's affair with Davies did not last long, and he had a much more important relationship on the horizon anyways. Producers had cast Crawford as Gable's leading lady for 1932's Red Dust, but MGM studio head Meyer booted her from the film in an attempt to stamp down their affair. Instead, he had cast blonde bombshell at the time Jean Harlow.
Mm.
Once again, Meyer didn't miss, and Gable and Harlow had great chemistry and audiences loved them. However, behind the scenes, Meyer had his hands full. Partway through filming Red Dust, a dark tragedy occurred, leaving everyone involved scrambling. Carlo's husband had took his own life during the break from filming, and the circumstances were rather suspicious.
Mm.
Some suspected that Harlow had been the one to pull the trigger, while others speculated about a strange line from a note that he had left. Either way, it was a huge scandal, which, as we know, was Meyer's kryptonite. He tried to recast the role again, but an outpouring of sympathy for the newly widowed actress convinced him otherwise. Sadly, the tragedy was not over yet. Around this time, Gable ran into a problem. None of the pictures that MGM had developed or had in development were interesting enough for him. They were paying him $2,000 a week just to sit around.
Mm.
As always, Meyer had a solution. He lent Gable out to another studio for a rom-com called It Happened One Night, and the film made him the biggest star in Hollywood by a mile.
Mm.
Scores of Hollywood heavyweights had already turned down the role after seeing the script. On top of that, director Frank Capra didn't even want Gable in the role. After a difficult on-set experience, everyone involved, especially Gable and co-star Claudette Colbert, just wanted to forget about it. It wasn't a hit when it came to theaters, however, it did slowly start to gain traction. Even when the film itself and its 2 leads received Oscar nominations, there was still doubt. Claudette Colbert didn't even bother showing up to the ceremony, and an aide had to drag her off a train when she ended up winning. Against all odds, it became an enduring hit and became a life-changing moment for Gable. The Academy nominated Clark Gable for Best Actor for It Happened One Night, an award which he won, and his reaction was utterly tear-jerking for some. Gable had spent more than a decade struggling for recognition in Hollywood, and now he had it. However, when a young fan admired the award, he gave it to the child. Gable told the boy that it was the honor that mattered to him, not the statue.
Hmm.
However, there was a bizarre side effect to the success of It Happened One Night. While filming a scene where his character undresses, Gable found it difficult to remove his undershirt while also keeping the momentum going. So the wardrobe took the undershirt out of the equation altogether. It started a huge trend among men and led to a massive crash in undershirt sales, which is kind of funny.
It is. It really is.
As a follow-up, Gable appeared in 1937's Saratoga opposite of his old friend Jean Harlow. But quickly their time on set turned into a living nightmare. Harlow's health began to mysteriously decline. Often she was so weak while on set that Gable had to physically support her between takes. Harlow then took time to recover, but when Gable went to visit her in the hospital, he was in for a shock. When he saw her in the hospital bed, his heart broke into a million pieces. His old friend and co-star was severely bloated and strangely had the smell of urine on her breath. Doctors gave her a devastating diagnosis. She was in the early stages of kidney failure. Soon after, she was dead. Harlow died at the age of 26. Gable was bereft, but the tragedy did not end there. When Harlow passed, the film was 90% complete, so the studio insisted that it be finished. Gable had tried his best, but when he had to film scenes without Harlow at his side, or with one of her body doubles, he said it was like being in the arms of a ghost.
I guess so. It'd be kind of weird.
It would. Either way, Harlow's fans crowded movie theaters to see her one last time, and the film, as you can imagine, was a massive hit. Gable could appear opposite a grapefruit on screen, and it would seem that he would manage to manufacture some chemistry out of it. And far too often, that chemistry had percolated off screen as well, despite his ongoing marriage with Maria Lincoln. I bet you forgot he was still married.
Yeah, really, right?
Does not come up often.
It doesn't. Really?
Anyways, however, he left one co-star in particular alone, at least at first. When Gable appeared with Carole Lombard in No Man of Her Own, he did not make a pass at her. Knowing his reputation, this had surprised Lombard, which is fair.
For sure.
As she once said, we did all kinds of hot love scenes, and I never got any kind of a tremble out of him. Years later, Gable and Lombard crossed paths at a ball. This time, he didn't hide how he felt. In fact, he came right out with it and asked Lombard back to his hotel room. To this, the actress responded, "Who do you think you are?" And while she may have had a witty comeback, from that moment, the pair were rarely seen apart. Gable's first two marriages had been unions of convenience, at least for him. They were wealthy and they could help him, and he had needed the help. However, after his Oscar win, he didn't need help anymore. Still, a messy divorce in the middle of a victory lap was not a good look, so Gable and his second wife drew up a separation agreement and then sat on it for a few years. So, Lombard changed Gable's life in more ways than one. When the studio execs began to plan the film adaptation of Margaret Mitchell's best-selling novel, Gone with the Wind, every actor and actress in Hollywood clamored for the part. Wonder why.
Right.
However, Gable didn't. Lombard, who had read the book and wanted to play Scarlett O'Hara, gave Gable a copy of the novel. Gable, characteristically macho, pushed the love story aside and said it would be a woman's picture. But, as we all know, the story does not end there. Gable and Lombard did not try to hide their romance really at all. However, not everyone was on board. Gable's second wife, Lingham, had expected that eventually he'd come back to her. She knew that he had scores of affairs, and she didn't care. However, this one was different. Even the tabloids began to embrace Gable and Lombard as a couple, painting Lingham as the villain instead of the victim, which is very weird and very double-standardy when you think about it.
It kind of is.
Because they like the guy.
Right.
They paint him in such a very good picture.
Right.
Yet most men that do this, and women too, obviously, they just drag through the mud. They just try their damnedest to ruin their reputation.
Exactly. It is. It just depends on the person.
It's weird. It
It
never
is.
made much sense to me.
It is, but it's very true. It happens, definitely.
Anyways, yeah. Lingham was not ready to let this go at all. She had supported Gable through the rocky early years of his career, and now he was the world's biggest movie star at the time.
Right.
She wasn't about to let that go. Gable pushed her to go through with the divorce, which only made her angrier. MGM also wanted him out of the marriage, hoping to avoid any further scandal.
I guess I can kind of see both sides of it, but then again, you
Yeah.
got to think, why hold on to somebody who's very bluntly telling you they do not want you and has
Money
been,
and fame.
you know what I'm saying, though, but has been doing that through the entire marriage. It just seems like it makes you look like a fool.
It does, but
And
also
the extent,
money and fame.
Oh, I get it. I mean, that's not what I mean, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. Yeah, I get it
But I
entirely.
get where she's coming from, too. She feels like she made his career to an extent.
Yeah. And
But
she did,
I guess
to an extent.
but sure. Just because she knows it.
So, anyways, they finally came up with a ingenious plan. If Gable accepted the role of Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, MGM would pay him so handsomely that the expensive divorce settlement would be a drop in the bucket. It was a win-win for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Except for Lingham.
Well, fair enough.
So Lingham tried to make it difficult for Gable by filing for divorce in California, which would mean that he'd need to wait before marrying Lombard. Gable and Lingham finally divorced because she finally relented, and during a production break from Gone with the Wind, Gable married Lombard just 13 days after his divorce.
Then again, it doesn't really sound like it does. I'm kind of thinking you're right, that it is more like a fame thing she was getting because she was married to him more than she really cared about him.
Yeah.
It does sort of sound more like spotted after a point, because if she knew he was cheating all the time and she didn't care, you know what I mean? That kind of makes you wonder.
She just wanted the status, I'm pretty sure, of being his wife.
Being Clark Gable's wife.
Because at that point, his name was bigger than hers.
Yeah.
And he was richer than her probably at that point,
yeah,
too.
Exactly. So, yeah, and that just sounds like it was more of a spot thing to a point.
Yeah.
But oh well.
Either way.
Not saying he's a good guy, but
no.
know what I'm saying. After a point, it's just like, who, what are you even doing anymore?
Really, you don't feel bad for either party in this scenario.
Not especially, no. Not especially.
But anyways, Lombard, or rather with Lombard, Gable could finally be himself. They laughed together, played pranks on each other, and had similar tastes.
Right.
While she was no stranger to the glitz and glam of Hollywood parties, she was also fine getting into the stables with Gable and accompanying him on any of his hunting trips, which is rare.
That is odd, yeah.
For like the women of that area of that time.
Right. Yeah.
Usually they all try to be the whole prim and proper type deal.
Exactly, you're right.
Anyways, they were a perfect match.
Huh?
Gable had been apprehensive at first, but even he had to admit that he was a perfect fit for Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind.
Mm.
Not only that, he could tell that he was in good company from the first moment he set foot on set. Making a 4-hour historical epic could have been a total nightmare. However, Gable and the rest of the cast had the time of their lives making the film.
Mm.
And for once, it was good, clean fun. Before famous pranksters like George Clooney, there was Clark Gable. On the set of Gone with the Wind, he met his match. There was a scene where he was supposed to carry Olivia de Havilland's character. However, de Havilland and the crew actually fastened her body to the set. When Gable went to pick her up, he nearly threw out his back.
Oh, shit.
However, it wasn't all fun and games. Gable was at his best on the set of Gone with the Wind, and despite some early difficulties with the director, who was later fired, he got along with everyone, especially Hattie McDaniel. In fact, he pulled one of his signature pranks on her. During a scene where the characters celebrate the birth of Rhett and Scarlett's child, he covertly replaced the tea she usually drank with a rather stiff beverage. She didn't notice until it was too late. Sadly, not everyone treated McDaniel as well as Gable.
I imagine not.
No.
She was black back in those days. You just know it was awful.
Oh, absolutely. As is about to come up.
Yeah, it was disgusting, but racism was disgusting back
in
those
days. It was prominent.
It was very disgusting. I mean, it was back still when lynchings went out. I mean, horrible time in history.
Anyways, when Gone with the Wind finally began filming, Gable walked on set for the first time, and immediately he actually nearly walked right off because he had saw that the bathrooms had been segregated by race.
Ugh.
And he was enraged by this.
I don't blame him. That is sickening.
Yeah.
Especially since she is like a big star considering on the movie herself. And
oh, yeah.
To how they got treated. It is awful. It really was.
Anyways, he actually insisted that the producer change it, or he'd leave them without a Rhett Butler, which is don't know. I think that's kind of cool,
It
personally.
is. It is. To actually stand up for something that you know is wrong. I actually think is good.
The fact that he would be willing to walk out of or walk away from such a big paycheck
right over something
over
like
morals.
over something like that.
Over
Exactly.
morals.
And the way
Something that I'd say 99 out of 100 people in LA had none.
exactly. They wouldn't have cared. All they've been seeing was the dollar sign. So yeah, that definitely tells you that he wasn't all bad.
Yeah. He was pretty bad. He wasn't
Oh,
all bad,
no.
which is very rare.
Exactly. And it's very, very rare. Even by even today's standards, that's rare.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it.
Anyway, back to this story. When it came time for the studio to release the film, they had plans, or big plans, for a huge premiere that would reflect the film's grandeur. But when Gable found out, he was disgusted because the studios had scheduled the premiere to take place in Atlanta, which was, at the time, still segregated. When Gable realized that McDaniel couldn't be able to attend, his reaction was what many people would later describe as chilling. The studio's mistreatment of McDaniel made Gable so angry that he told them that he would be boycotting the premiere. However, McDaniel herself had actually begged him to go. He looked on proudly when McDaniel went on to win an Academy Award for her performance. The two remained lifelong friends. So, the Academy nominated Gable for Best Actor of his performance in Gone with the Wind. While the movie swept the awards that year, somehow Gable managed to lose. And apparently Lombard comforted him by saying, "Don't worry, we'll bring one home next year."
Right.
He explained that he thought it was his last chance to win one, and Lombard's response was, "Not you, you self-centered expletive.
Right.
I mean me."
Well,
Funny.
all right then.
Unfortunately, the good times could not last forever. By 1941, many U.S. stars had been galvanized to join the war effort, and Lombard was among them. In fact, she was so enthusiastic that she sent a letter to the president volunteering her husband for active duty.
Oh, her husband. I love it.
He replied and told the celebrity couple that their efforts could be better used at home. Lombard tirelessly began organizing and appearing at bond drives. This would be the beginning of the end for good old Clark Gable. This is where his life starts taking a massive downhill turn.
Right.
So travel took up most of Lombard's time, and in January of 1942, Lombard had traveled to her home state of Indiana to appear at a bond drive. She was returning home to LA with her mother and her press agent when a tragedy of a rather devastating kind struck.
Right.
Lombard's plane crashed, taking the lives of everyone on board. When Gable found out, he had rushed to the mountain himself in Nevada where it had happened. His reaction would be described as truly heartbreaking, as friends had to restrain Gable from scaling the mountain where the crash had occurred. When the search team finally located her body, he proclaimed through sobs, "Oh God, I don't want to go back to an empty house." He proceeded to reside at the Encino home they had shared for the rest of his life. On paper, Gable had moved on, but for the rest of his life, his heart had only belonged with Lombard.
Right.
When the U.S. entered World War II, Lombard had, of course, encouraged Gable to enlist, and following her untimely passing, he finally did. Gable joined the U.S. Air Force and joined a unit that had him flying a plane equipped with a camera that had filmed aerial gunners in action. He flew 5 missions, but he also caught the attention of the enemy. It turns out that Adolf Hitler himself was a huge fan, and when he had learned that Gable was fighting with the Allies, he offered a reward for his safe capture. Regardless, Gable made it out unscathed, and the U.S. awarded him multiple honors for his service. He returned home and briefly rested before resuming his career and his love life. When Gable returned home, he found comfort in the arms of actress Virginia Gray. The pair had an on-again, off-again relationship before his marriage to Lombard, and they began spending as much time together, or so much time together, that the tabloid began to speculate that she'd be the 4th Mrs. Gable. Well, they were all in for a shock, as even though the couple had spent years together throughout the 40s, and Gray patiently waited for a proposal, even as Gable dated others, Gable had one day proposed to a woman named Sylvia Ashley. Leaving Gray heartbroken, it was actually a surprise to everyone when Gable called a friend and asked him to help organize a private ceremony. The friend had actually asked who Sylvia was because she was a nobody, basically. Right. It wasn't a great start and certainly wasn't a great ending. Lady Sylvia Ashley was the polar opposite of Carole Lombard. She was an extravagant spender, loved lavish Hollywood parties, and did not participate in any of her husband's hobbies. Soon, their mismatch began to wear on the couple, and not long after their first anniversary, Gable demanded a divorce. Ashley was heartbroken, but it was clear that Gable wasn't. Gable couldn't get out of the marriage fast enough, and after Ashley tearfully testified at their divorce hearing, Gable told friends that he, quote unquote, must have been drunk when he proposed to her.
Okay.
When the courts finalized their divorce, he was visibly relieved. And after his iconic performance in Gone with the Wind and his heroic turn fighting in World War II, MGM had trouble finding roles that were good enough for Gable. His star power and the attention that he garnered from fans and the media. Gable noticed and grew more and more frustrated with the studio that had made him a star. It all culminated explosively with the film Mogambo. From the moment Gable walked on set, his experience with the film was a disaster. He clashed with the director, John Ford, over Ford's poor treatment of Ava Gardner, and Ford would openly insult Gabe's appearance in front of the crew. He also fell ill on set and had to leave temporarily to treat a painful infection. Things weren't always terrible, though, as sometimes they were downright scandalous. While on the set of the film, Gable was delighted to learn that his much younger co-star, Grace Kelly, also enjoyed hunting. Soon after, they went on a trip together, and they had begun an affair. When the production moved to London, he got them a hotel room so that they could continue seeing each other. However, the affair did not last much longer. Grace Kelly's mother came to see her in London and expressed approval at the match between her daughter and Gable. The actor realized he'd gotten in a little too deep and panicked, leaving Kelly devastated. I don't think the phrase "he left a trail of broken hearts" quite does it right when it comes to Clark Gable, because Jesus Christ, he left more than a trail. He left a freaking highway.
He did. He had a lot of affairs, and then God knows how many more that we haven't even mentioned.
Oh yeah, it did not end with Kelly. Things were changing quickly in Hollywood, and in 1951, MGM fired Gable's old boss, Louis B. Mayer, and while the two had often been at odds, Gable was disturbed by the news, and by the lack of roles coming his way. In 1954, after 23 years with MGM, Gable left the studio. While it certainly was the right move, Gable would never again capture the success he had had in early years. However, there was one silver lining. In 1954, Gable reconnected with an old flame who had recently divorced her third husband. Her name was Kay Williams, and before long they were off to the races. They had eloped in Nevada with just a few friends and family members present. This match was different from his others, as ill-fated marriages, and he had seemed happier, as he'd been with Lombard, actually. However, happily ever after was not in the cards, as when the pair appeared together in one of his movie premieres in 1955's, Williams was visibly pregnant. However, sadly, tragedy struck, and she miscarried soon after. Gable was a doting stepfather to her children, but he wanted to become he wanted to become a father of his own.
Right.
And they kept trying. Williams became pregnant again in 1960. Unfortunately, their bliss was not meant to be, as after leaving MGM, Gable didn't receive any truly remarkable performances. Not totally his fault, as most of the movies he appeared in were middling. However, there was one notable exception. In 1960, Gable began working on The Misfits opposite Marilyn Monroe and Montgomery Clift. The film would eventually reach icon status, and it was a long road to get there, and not everyone made it through. But The Misfits was filmed in the desert in blistering heat, and despite his age, Gable insisted on doing his own stunts, which is impressive.
Yeah, and this is one of the few movies that I've seen of their last movies. I actually saw this movie. It's interesting. I want to say that.
Yeah. So, on top of that, doctors had to constantly be on set to monitor Monroe, who was going through a divorce from the film's scriptwriter, which has got to be messy.
Yeah, Arthur Miller. Was
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
And Cliff, who had heart problems.
Mm.
So,
So
yeah.
everybody was
Everyone needed a doctor, and
everybody
everyone was
kinda
going through some
yeah,
shit.
everybody was doing it wasn't good. Okay, gotcha.
2 days after completing filming on The Misfits, Clark Gable had a heart attack. Many had speculated that he had been in ill health on the set, and his voice had drastically changed. The insurance company had only approved his casting after he'd quit smoking and drinking for a week, and Gable wound up in the hospital with his devoted wife by his side. While Gable was already 59, no one could have predicted what happened next. At first, Gable's condition seemed to be improving. One night, Williams left his side to get some sleep, and a few hours later, the doctor woke her up to tell her that Gable had passed, as he had had a second heart attack and his body couldn't hold out.
Goodness.
Williams was 4 months pregnant at the time. In March of 1961, she gave birth to a boy whom she named John Clark, who would be Gable's only son, and one he never got to meet.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah. As per his wishes, Gable was laid to rest alongside the love of his life, Carole Lombard. Over 200 people attended the funeral, including an honor guard, and Spencer Tracy and James Stewart even attended. Soon, the tributes began to pour out. However, there was a darker side to it all. Following Gable's passing, gossip columnist named Luella Parsons spread a series of vicious rumors about the star's final days. Parsons claimed that Monroe had caused so many problems and delays on set that Gable had become enraged, flat out suggesting that the blonde bombshell was responsible for the star's untimely end.
Oh, grace.
However, this story was very wrong.
I would say so. What she had done been so bad to, you know what I mean?
Not only that, the two were actually very close friends on set.
Right.
They had become very friendly, and Gable himself actually initiated because when Monroe had first walked onto the set, she was so anxious about meeting him because he was such a big name at the time. He actually helped her calm down.
Right.
And over time helped her through stuff and yeah.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that article had taken a toll on Monroe, who was already fairly old at the time, and that had attributed to her.
Yeah, she was known to be
decline.
kind of in a depressive state there towards the end, so I'm sure that did not help.
No. Eventually, she had passed away to an overdose, which people have suspected that this article was
as
all
well,
about.
you know, about her death, that
Right.
it wasn't really her, that people did something to her. And who knows? I mean,
It could have been
it
anything.
could have been a lot of things going on, but this is what supposedly what happened is that she did die from accidental overdose, basically. It was what it was believed to have been. As
Right.
far as I know, I don't think she was intentionally trying to end her life.
No. Anyways, while Gable didn't live to see the Misfits become a success, he was able to see a rough cut of the film before he'd passed. And what he said about it was actually pretty sad, and it was said to be heartbreaking by many people. Screenwriter Arthur Miller reported that Gable had said, "This is the best picture I've made, and it's the only time I've been able to act." Everyone in Hollywood knew Gable was a womanizer. However, after he passed, many of his darkest secrets came tumbling out, supposedly.
Right.
While making a film in the early 1930s, Gable had supposedly impregnated his co-star, Loretta Young. The studio covered it up, and Young went away for a few months, later pretending that she'd adopted the daughter she gave birth to.
Right.
Gable never acknowledged the child. Young only told the girl about her true parentage after Gable had passed. However, Loretta Young passed in 2000, and her daughter with Gable, her name was Judy Lewis, lost her life to cancer in 2014.
Right.
It was then that Young's granddaughter-in-law revealed that the Young had told her that the tryst with Gable had not been consensual, a secret of which she had hidden her entire life.
Right.
The family chose to remain silent until after Young and Lewis had died.
And I feel kind of bad for that kid there because they basically, now this is supposedly what really happened. I don't know whether Clark Gable was the dad or not. They said he was. But anyway, she gives birth to it and then pretends that she adopted the baby when she was really the mother.
Which has got to be hell on that kid's psychological
yeah, and then later
state.
they comes out, no, I'm really your mother because she wasn't married, yada, yada. That's how crazy things were back then.
Yeah.
It's nuts. But anyway.
Anyways, so when Lombard passed in the plane crash, Gable was devastated. However, there have been theories that he had actually played a role in her passing. At the time, Gable was filming a series of movies with starlet Lana Turner, and soon the gossip columnists began to spread rumors that the two were having an affair. Lombard had made plans to fly home to LA and Gable, however, she never made it. After losing Lombard, Gable was heartbroken, and since Lombard had been traveling to see him, he had blamed himself. When the tormented actor enlisted to fight in World War II, many had assumed that this eagerness to put himself in dangerous situations was actually a self-inflicted form of penance for his role in Lombard's death. During his lifetime, people began to call him the King of Hollywood, which was a fair title.
I'd say so. He was a very big name. I mean, he's even still known today.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you just know him from only Gone with the Wind, for example. I mean, most people at the very least have heard of him. That's saying something. You know, someone who's basically from like the 40s, 50s, you know, kind of. So, yeah.
Right. This story was honestly one of the saddest ones, in my opinion, that I've covered personally. Many people, myself actually included, do believe that the golden age of Hollywood died with Gable, which is an accurate statement. Again, in my opinion.
A lot of those around that time that were really huge, I would say yes, it definitely did, because things just started changing.
They did.
Not necessarily for the better. I guess in some ways for the better, but in some ways, no.
Some ways it also got a lot worse.
It did. It did. It's just like everything. It's just awful. But he's another one that had a kind of interesting life. Now, he was a womanizer, but I don't know that he was a bad person, you know, overall. Because it sort of seems like the women he was married to didn't really care. Right. So I don't even know that I don't know.
Personally, the way I see it, and this is why I'm able to justify, at least to myself, him not being a horrible person. He used what he could. He used what tools were at his disposal.
At the time, yeah. I mean,
and yeah, it was people, but also this was Hollywood.
His looks, his charm to, you know, kind of luring older women. But then again, they knew what was going on. They weren't.
This was Hollywood. Yeah, exactly. People did this shit all the time.
And they still do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And not just in Hollywood. People do it all the time.
It shocks me that people are always surprised when a marriage comes out to have been a marriage of convenience, as they call it.
There are literal websites where women are looking for sugar daddies.
Oh, yeah, so absolutely.
That tells you right there that this
and is... And the same thing other way around.
Well, exactly. But I'm just, saying that just for an example. But yeah, it goes both ways. And these women are signing up. These men are signing up. Both sides, looking for whatever. And you're telling me that they don't know what's up.
They absolutely do.
So, yeah. So,
honestly, the way some of these stories and articles frame it, they make it look like a lot of these women are dumber than they are.
Right. Now,
which is hilarious to me.
I won't say in some cases, and I won't say men or women. There's romance scandals where people are lured in thinking things are different. And they may be naive and it may happen. But in a lot of these cases like this, no. They know. They know what they're doing. Both of them know what's up. They're not as naive and stupid as you think they are.
Especially since some of the women he used were older women, and they've had experience in this world.
And they were probably using him a little bit, too, because he was a hot young guy, and they kind of ride his coattails a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's what the one was doing.
Yes.
Pretty much just saying she was doing it, because she got to say she was Clark Gable's husband, and a wife. I was right.
Not the first time.
Then I was like, wait a minute. Anyway, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, yeah. You know exactly what it was. And like I said, it almost got to the point where it was almost spiteful, not that she really cared about him or wanted to be married to him, that she was just being spiteful about not wanting to get a divorce just because she didn't want to give up that status more than that she really cared about him.
Right.
And I'm not saying he was an angel or anything, but at the same time, come on. That doesn't make you look any better either. Is all I'm saying.
It really doesn't.
That's all I mean. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed that segment. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to stay disturbed.
Okay, for anybody who's still listening beyond this point for whatever reason, seriously, why are you listening to a podcast after the end sequence?
Good question.
Leave a comment or something, like if there's anything specific you want us to cover, any one specific you want us to cover. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sad story, just really anyone from that era of old Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood. Really just want to learn more about old actors and actresses. Their stories are interesting to me.
A lot of them are. They really are.
But anyways, yeah, that's it. See ya.